Today we're going to be talking about HPLC versus UHPLC. What's better? Why? What should you choose when? So let's get into it. Oftentimes now you see a lot of instrument vendors, they're pushing UHPLC. It's going to be so good for you and it's going to be so much better for you. Well, let's dive into that. Let's decide whether or not it's better to have an HPLC type application or a UHPLC application. And what does that even mean? The difference between HPLC and UHPLC is really dependent on the pressure. So if you have, I would say around 400 bar and below, which is around 6,000 PSI, that would be more classified towards HPLC. When you start getting above that, then we're getting into the UHPLC realm. UHPLC means you get more efficiency because you get more plates. More plates is more efficiency, which ideally means more resolution. So that's gonna be better, right? So here we have the resolution equation. I know, busting out the math, right? So I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible. This is resolution. This is efficiency, this is retention, and this is selectivity. So in a nutshell, this is efficiency, this is like your theoretical plate counts. So the smaller the particles you get, this value goes up. Or the more particles you have in your column, like a longer the column, this goes up too. So if you double the column length, you double the efficiency. If you half the column size, like a 5 micron to a 2.5 micron, you double the efficiency. These two I kind of like to group together because they're related, right? This is retention, so this is the retention of two peaks, retaining peak to the earlier retaining peak, and this is an alpha. This is the ratio between the two retaining peaks. So what you'll notice is something very stark. If you increase the retention factor by double, then this is gonna lead to a much larger effect on your resolution. But when you double efficiency, it only increases by a square. So a doubling of efficiency leads to a 1.4% increase, but a doubling of selectivity oftentimes can lead to much more than that. What a lot of people are focused on is efficiency. But if you have peaks that are very colluding, or we call that a critical pair, this won't do as much. But what'll happen is the pressure increases by a square. If you half the column size, you actually increase the pressure by a factor of 4, which is why you need a UHPLC. At the end of the day, does having a UHPLC and having more efficiency help? Yeah, it definitely does. It's not to say it doesn't. Oftentimes people focus on this way more. They focus on picking the right column chemistry and just getting a good separation. There's a lot of drawbacks that people don't really think about when they buy a UHPLC instrument because they're just like, well, it could do everything an HPLC can do, but I can also squeeze more plate counts and get more resolution, right? When you choose a column with a smaller particle size, there's things that you aren't quite thinking about. One thing is that sucker clogs way more often. You clog the column even though you're getting half the runtime. If your instrument shuts down overnight, well then what was the point of that? Or you're throwing out more columns because they're clogging more often. Well, now you've greatly increased your cost, right? You're trying to save solvent, but now you're chucking more columns. You also have to be a lot more careful with sample prep. You gotta have much cleaner samples. You have to filter a lot more. And then maintenance costs. It'll cost you more money to maintain a UHPLC system. The PMs will cost you more. But if you need it, you need it. The way that I look at it is if you can do an application at lower pressure with a larger particle size column and you get that sucker running more often, HPLC applications are still quite good. And for the times that you absolutely need it, maybe it's the only way you can get a separation, or you really, really need the time, or you have a really good sample prep, then UHPLC would be there. But I would say for applications that require crazy high pressure, like 1,000 bar or above, we're talking about the super heavy duty instruments out there, I would say maybe 1% of people are actually doing that. The vast majority of people are running methods are at lower pressures. So the biggest takeaway from this video is UHPLCs give you more efficiency, but that's not the end all be all for resolution. When you're considering a UHPLC versus an HPLC, you want to also consider all the other costs that go along with that to see if it's worth it for you in your lab. All right, so if you found that video to be helpful, subscribe, you know what to do. See you next time.